Ladies and gentlemen, there is a unique kind of strength in a woman who chooses to live alone. A woman who wakes up every morning, not because someone called her beautiful, not because someone validated her existence, but because she validates herself. When a woman chooses to live alone, the world often misunderstands her. People assume she must be lonely, broken, or waiting for someone to complete her. But in reality, living alone becomes a declaration of inner power. It means she trusts herself enough to build a life without needing constant company. It means she understands that solitude is not emptiness. It's a quiet space where she can hear her own thoughts, desires, and dreams without distraction. She discovers that she is capable of handling responsibilities that many fear facing on their own. She pays her own bills, makes her own decisions, and walks through life without depending on a relationship to give her direction. This kind of independence builds a rare kind of confidence, the kind that can only be earned, not given. Living alone teaches her that her value does not come from someone texting her good morning or holding her at night. Her value comes from the strength she carries, the choices she makes, and the courage she shows in navigating life on her own terms. It shows her that she can survive difficult days, celebrate her victories, and grow without needing someone by her side to validate her existence. She realizes that the silence of her home is not a void, it is peace. It is a space where she can breathe, rest, heal, and become the woman she wants to be. And with each passing day, she learns to rely on herself more deeply, proving again and again that living alone is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of a woman who knows her worth and chooses her own stability over forced companionship. When a woman lives alone, she begins to understand that confidence is not something another person gives you. It is something you develop within yourself. She learns to trust her instincts, her decisions, and her abilities because she has no one else to lean on but herself. Every problem she solves alone, every challenge she faces without help, every moment she chooses strength over fear. All of it becomes the foundation of unshakable confidence. She doesn't wait for someone to tell her she's capable. She proves it to herself day after day. Whether it's managing her home, handling her work, or navigating life's uncertainties, she realizes she is far more powerful than she ever thought. She no longer needs a partner to boost her self-esteem or validate her worth. Her confidence is no longer borrowed, it is built. Living alone teaches her that she doesn't need romantic attention to feel beautiful or valuable. She doesn't rely on compliments to feel seen or appreciated. She discovers her own beauty in the mirror, her own strength in her actions, and her own worth in the life she's creating. And the more she relies on herself, the more she understands that real confidence is born from self-respect, independence, and resilience. This kind of confidence changes everything about her. It changes how she walks, how she speaks, how she makes decisions, and how she sets boundaries. She no longer feels pressure to accept relationships out of fear or desperation because she knows she is complete on her own. She realizes that her life is not waiting for a man to enter. Her life is moving forward with or without one. And that realization becomes the source of a powerful, unbreakable self-belief that no one can take away. When a woman lives alone, she starts to understand herself in ways she never could when surrounded by noise, expectations, or constant emotional dependence. A solitude becomes her teacher, a teacher that doesn't rush her, doesn't judge her, and doesn't demand anything from her. It simply reveals who she truly is beneath all the layers society has placed on her. She learns to soothe her own heart when it hurts. She learns to comfort herself during difficult days instead of searching for someone else to lift her up. She discovers that she can sit with her emotions, sadness, frustration, joy, peace, and process them on her own terms. This emotional self-sufficiency becomes one of her strongest qualities because she no longer depends on someone else to regulate her mood or bring stability to her life. Living alone teaches her she is capable of being her own support system. She realizes that she doesn't need a romantic partner to feel understood. She can understand herself. She doesn't need someone to calm her fears. She can face them. She doesn't need someone to fix her. She can heal herself. And the more she practices this emotional independence, the more resilient she becomes. She begins to value her inner world, her thoughts, her feelings, her dreams, because she finally has the space to explore them without interruption. Her emotion grows silently day by day until she becomes a woman who doesn't break easily, a woman who doesn't lose herself in relationships, a woman who knows how to stand on her own, even in moments of vulnerability. Solitude teaches her that emotions are not something to fear, but something to understand. And once she learns to navigate her emotional landscape on her own, she becomes someone who can love without losing herself, care without clinging, and give without draining her own soul. When a woman lives alone, she discovers the rare freedom of being completely in charge of her own time. She wakes up when she chooses, not when someone else expects her to. She builds routines that nourish her, not routines built around another person's needs or moods. She learns what it feels like to live a life where every minute belongs to her, not shared, not compromised, not negotiated. Her mornings become sacred. Her evenings become peaceful. Her home becomes a space filled only with the energy she allows. She can rest whenever she needs to, work however she wants to, and pursue her passions without having to explain her choices to anyone. Her life no longer revolves around trying to keep someone else happy. It revolves around her growth, her dreams, and her emotional well-being. Living alone teaches her the importance of protecting her energy. She becomes more careful with who she gives her time to, who she lets into her home, and who she allows near her heart. She starts recognizing the difference between people who uplift her and people who drain her. And because she knows the peace of her personal space, she refuses to let chaos enter it. She learns that her home is her sanctuary, a place where she can think clearly, heal quietly, and grow steadily. She can decorate it the way she likes, organize it to match her lifestyle, and fill it with things that inspire her. Every corner reflects her personality, not someone else's expectations. In this space, she breathes more freely, thinks more deeply, and exists more authentically. And with full control of her time, she realizes that she gets to choose how her days unfold. She gets to decide what is worth her energy and what is not. She no longer feels pressured to rush, to adjust, or to sacrifice herself just to fit into someone else's schedule. Her time becomes her treasure. Her energy becomes her priority, and her personal space becomes her power. For a long time, society has tried to convince women that their worth is connected to their relationship status, as if being single makes them incomplete, invisible, or somehow less successful. But a woman who lives alone learns to break free from this limiting belief. She realizes that her value doesn't rise or fall based on whether someone chooses her. Her worth is not a reflection of someone else's interest, affection, or approval. She understands that her beauty, intelligence, strength, and identity are not validated by a boyfriend. She doesn't need someone to claim her to feel important. She doesn't need to be in a relationship to feel loved. She doesn't need someone beside her to feel relevant. She becomes aware that she is already whole, already enough, and already deserving simply because she exists. Living alone gives her the space to define herself without the influence of a relationship. She can pursue her dreams without interruption, build her career without distraction, and focus on her self-growth without the need for external validation. She sees that her accomplishments come from her hard work, not from a partner's presence. She begins to respect herself for everything she is achieving on her own. She learns that her happiness does not depend on a romantic connection. It comes from the life she builds, the choices she makes, the peace she protects, and the woman she becomes through her own efforts. She becomes proud of the fact that she does not need a relationship to feel confident or worthy. And as she embraces this truth, she stops comparing herself to others. She stops rushing into relationships just to avoid judgment. She stops accepting less than she deserves. She no longer feels pressured to settle because she knows she is valuable with or without a boyfriend. Her identity is not single. Her identity is strong, independent, capable, and complete. She defines her own worth, and that realization becomes one of the most empowering truths of her life. When a woman lives alone, she begins to understand her emotional desires with greater clarity. She recognizes that there is a huge difference between wanting someone and needing someone. Wanting companionship is natural. It comes from the human desire to connect, share, and experience life with another person. But needing validation is different. It comes from insecurity, fear, and the belief that love from another person determines one's worth. As she spends time alone, she starts to see that the desire for companionship does not make her weak. It makes her human. But she also realizes that depending on a partner for validation traps her in a cycle where she constantly seeks approval just to feel good about herself. Living alone helps her break free from this dependency. She begins to value her own voice more than external praise. She learns that she does not need someone to tell her she is beautiful to believe it. She does not need a boyfriend to reassure her that she is important or enough. She starts to build her self-worth from within, from her accomplishments, her resilience, her kindness, and her growth. Her confidence shifts from being externally controlled to internally grounded. With this clarity, she becomes more intentional with love. She no longer rushes into relationships out of fear of being alone. She no longer clings to people who give her half attention or half effort. She stops accepting relationships that only offer temporary validation but no true emotional connection. Instead, she becomes patient, discerning, and strong enough to wait for someone who adds value to her life, not someone who temporarily fills a void. Living alone teaches her emotional maturity. She realizes that companionship is something she would enjoy, but not something she depends on to feel whole. She understands that she can desire love without losing herself, and she can appreciate connection without surrendering her self-respect. She stops confusing attention with affection, interest with loyalty, or presence with commitment. She grows into a woman who knows exactly what she deserves. Someone who compliments her, not completes her. Someone who walks beside her, not someone she leans on for emotional stability. Someone she chooses, not someone she needs for validation. When a woman lives alone, she begins to discover who she is without anyone else's influence shaping her identity. She is no longer someone's girlfriend or someone's emotional support or someone's constant caretaker. She stands as herself, raw, authentic, and free from the pressure of being defined by a relationship. This independence becomes the fuel that strengthens her sense of identity. She starts making decisions that align with her own values, not decisions that aim to please someone else. She learns to trust her instincts because every day she relies on them. She begins to understand what brings her joy, what drains her, what inspires her, and what she wants her future to look like. Without the noise of a relationship dictating her choices, her true self begins to rise to the surface. Independence allows her to follow her ambitions without hesitation. She can study for hours, work late, travel, explore hobbies, or pursue her dreams without having to negotiate her time or energy. She no longer feels guilty for prioritizing herself. Her life becomes a reflection of her own desire, her own discipline, and her own goals. This freedom makes her stronger and more self-aware than ever before. As she builds her daily life, she also builds a sense of direction. She becomes more intentional with her choices, the people she allows into her space, the dreams she invests in, and the boundaries she sets. She becomes protective of her peace because she understands how precious it is. Independence teaches her that her purpose is not rooted in being someone's partner, it is rooted in becoming the best version of herself. She realizes that identity is not something she borrows from a relationship. Identity is something she creates through her experiences, her attempts, her failures, and her victories. And the more she stands on her own 2 feet, the clearer her vision becomes. She feels proud of the woman she is becoming, a woman who can define herself, direct her own path, and choose her future without permission or approval. Through independence, she gains clarity, she gains direction, she gains strength. And most importantly, she gains a deep understanding that her purpose in life is far greater than simply being someone's companion. One of the most transformative changes a woman experiences when she lives alone is the shift from seeking attention to seeking alignment. She no longer accepts anyone who walks into her life simply because she feels lonely or afraid of being single. Instead, she becomes selective, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. She has experienced peace, stability, and emotional clarity in her solitude, and she refuses to let anyone disturb that. She has learned what it feels like to enjoy her own company, to thrive in her own silence, and to build a life that reflects her values. Because of this, she no longer entertains individuals who bring chaos, shots, inconsistency, or emotional games. She has learned that being single is far better than being in a relationship that drains her spirit. She understands that temporary affection is never worth losing long-term peace. Her standards rise not because she expects perfection from others, but because she has finally recognized her worth. She sees her time as precious, her peace as sacred, and her heart as something that should be protected, not exposed to anyone who hasn't earned the right to be there. She no longer tolerates mixed signals, broken promises, or half-hearted efforts. She wants someone who aligns with her values, respects her boundaries, and contributes positively to her life. Living alone teaches her to observe people more carefully, how they talk, how they treat others, how consistent their actions are, and whether they add warmth or coldness to her life. She becomes more intuitive, more aware, and more confident in saying no to what doesn't feel right. She no longer falls for charm, she looks for character. She no longer gets impressed by potential, she pays attention to patterns. This selectiveness is not about being difficult, it's about knowing she deserves a love that is healthy, honest, and respectful. She understands that she is no longer desperate for attention because she already receives the best version of it from herself. She doesn't crave someone to complete her. She is already whole. And because she has tasted the power of independence, she will only allow someone in her life who enhances what she has built, not someone who threatens. Her solitude has taught her that love should never cost her identity, peace, or dignity. So she chooses carefully, intentionally, and confidently because she knows that the right person will never make her feel like she is losing herself just to keep them. As a woman lives alone, she begins to realize just how priceless peace truly is. Not the temporary, fragile kind of peace that depends on someone else's behavior, emotions, or decisions, but the deep, steady, unshakable peace that comes from being in full control of her environment and her life. She no longer has to walk on eggshells, no longer has to manage someone else's moods, and no longer has to sacrifice her own comfort just to maintain harmony. Her home becomes a place where her mind can rest, her heart can breathe, and her soul can expand. She discovers that freedom is not just about doing whatever she wants. It's about living without fear of judgment. It's about making choices that feel right to her without needing anyone's approval. It's about waking up each day knowing that she is living life on her own terms. This sense of freedom empowers her, strengthens her, and gives her a quiet kind of confidence that doesn't need to be announced. It simply radiates from her. Her priorities begin to shift. Instead of chasing relationships that drain her, she chooses experiences that fulfill her. Instead of seeking validation from others, she focuses on building a life she is proud of. Instead of surrounding herself with people who bring stress or negativity, she becomes very intentional about preserving her inner calm. She starts to notice how certain energies affect her, and she protects her peace the same way she would protect something precious. She spends more time doing things that bring joy and less time explaining herself. She creates routines that nourish her body and rituals that restore her spirit. She builds a lifestyle where emotional safety is not optional, it is essential. The more she lives in peace, the more allergic she becomes to chaos, drama, and unnecessary emotional burden. Freedom also gives her the ability to explore parts of herself she may have neglected before. She can try new hobbies, pursue big goals, travel alone, learn new skills, and take risks without being held back. She creates her own rhythm, her own direction, and her own standards for how she wants to live. This peace, once she experiences it, becomes something she fiercely protects. She refuses to allow anyone into her life who brings more stress than joy. She no longer thinks twice about walking away from people who disturb her mental and emotional balance. Because once a woman discovers the healing power of peace and the strength that comes from true freedom, nothing, absolutely nothing, is worth losing that. Living alone becomes a training ground for a woman's mental and emotional evolution. When she has no one else to depend on, she learns to depend on herself, and that journey transforms her from the inside out. She begins to realize that every challenge she faces alone strengthens her resilience. Every decision she makes on her own sharpens her wisdom. Every emotion she manages without outside support increases her emotional maturity. Self-reliance forces her to look inward instead of outward. Instead of seeking answers from others, she learns to trust her own judgment. Instead of relying on someone to comfort her, she develops the ability to comfort herself. She learns how to calm her fears, how to motivate herself on hard days, and how to stay grounded when life becomes overwhelming. These skills become the foundation of her emotional stability. Through this journey, she grows mentally as well. She becomes more observant, more analytical, more aware of patterns, both in her life and in her own behavior. She starts understanding her strengths and weaknesses with clarity. She realizes the areas she needs to work on, not because someone pointed them out, but because solid gives her the space to reflect without distraction. Her mindset begins to shift. She becomes more solution-oriented instead of problem-focused. She stops waiting for someone to rescue her and starts asking herself, how can I handle this? She develops the mental discipline to stay calm under pressure and the confidence to face life head on. Her inner voice becomes stronger, wiser, and more encouraging. Emotionally, she starts to break old habits, the need for approval, the fear of being alone, the tendency to overattach. She begins to heal wounds she once ignored because she finally has the time and space to confront them. She learns to feel her emotions without being controlled by them. She understands that strength is not about suppressing pain, but learning how to process it with maturity. Through self-reliance, she becomes her own anchor. She discovers that she can overcome heartbreak, disappointment, setbacks, and uncertainty without falling apart. She grows more confident knowing that she is capable of rebuilding herself no matter what life throws her way. This kind of growth is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It slowly builds within her until one day she looks back and realizes she is no longer the same woman she once was. She has evolved mentally and emotionally into someone stronger, clearer, and more grounded than ever before. And so when a woman lives alone, the world may think she is missing something, but in truth, she has discovered something far greater. She has discovered herself. She has found her voice, her boundaries, her strength, and her inner peace. She has learned that love is beautiful, but self-respect is essential. She has realized that companionship is meaningful, but independence is priceless. And she understands now more clearly than ever that her life does not begin when a man enters it. Her life is already in motion, already powerful, already meaningful, because she is the one guiding it. She wakes up every day with the knowledge that she is capable of handling her own world. She chooses her own direction, sets her own standards, and builds her own future. She knows that being alone is not a punishment, it is an opportunity. It is the space where she grows, heals, strengthens, and transforms into the woman she was always meant to be. And one day, if love does come into her life, it will not be because she needed it, but because she chose it. She will not settle for half love, half effort, or half respect. She will only accept what aligns with her peace and values, because she has learned that her heart is not a place for temporary visitors. It is a home for something real. So here she stands, a woman who lives alone, not because she is incapable of love, but because she is capable of loving herself first. A woman who knows her worth, a woman who is whole, complete, and strong, a woman who walks through life with the quiet confidence of someone who understands that solitude is not emptiness. It is power. She is not waiting for someone to complete her. She is building a life she can be proud of. She is choosing herself. And that is the greatest strength of all.